while researching for this doc, and they said, when you're feeling nervous, just tell yourself you're excited, right? Because it's the same kind of physical response going on. So I want to start by saying, I am incredibly excited today to give this talk. So I signed up as like a focus group. I'm going to run through my slides. Hopefully we can finish in about 30 minutes. We do have the space for 45, so after that, we can open it up to discussion, talk about points and things, questions that you have. Or, you're welcome to leave if you want to go get another session. It's totally fine. So, let's start off by talking about what imposter syndrome is. That way you all know that you are in the right place and that you are all imposters as well. So, it is this feeling that you constantly have. Sometimes it goes away, sometimes it comes back. But it feels like all this is an accident, right? Everybody else is so much smarter. They're so much more successful. Everybody else is the expert, but I'm not. And they're going to find me out. Right? So we're going to take a quick quiz to find out if you all have imposter syndrome. Let me just get my question up. Okay, so I want you to raise your hand if you identify with any of these statements, okay? Do you chalk your success up to luck, timing, or computer error? Right? I just got lucky. Do you believe if I can do it, anybody can do it? Do you agonize over the smallest flaws in your work? Are you crushed by even constructive criticism, seeing it as evidence of your ineptness? When you do succeed, do you secretly feel like you fooled them again? Yeah? Do you worry that it's a matter of time before you are found out? Okay, good, you're all in the right spot. And the best part is, you are surrounded with people who feel exactly the same way that you do, right? So why is this so pervasive? I think it's because we are humans, and we are very flawed, right? In tech especially. There are very few objective ways to measure your skills, right? We have very few tests where you can take this test or a couple of tests and they say, all right, you are now officially a JavaScript developer. All right, you are officially a great manager, right? We don't have those kind of objective measurements. So everything we do is subjective. It's based off of other people's feelings about our work, right? Unfortunately, when it's subjective, that means cultural norms come into play. Someone who is a programmer, they will look and they will sound a very specific way. And if you don't look and sound that way, you feel like you're an imposter. I'm not a real programmer, right? I just dabble. Someone who knows how to solve that problem effectively, they're going to look and sound a specific way. And we have very strict rules in our society about what a programmer looks like, a sysadmin, QA, support, manager. These are very strict roles that we have. And as soon as you deviate outside of those roles in some little way, right? It could be just you don't show enough confidence, you don't talk loudly, you don't go up and approach people. Or maybe you do approach people, right? Programmers don't go and talk to people. That's not something we do. When you deviate outside of that, then everybody starts to question whether you are a real programmer, real DBA, a real manager, right? So what they think of your skills and expertise, it relies on how they feel about you and their personal opinions about you as opposed to your actual skills and expertise. Then it distorts that view, right? As soon as someone else doubts your expertise, it's like a mirror reflecting back on you, and you begin to doubt your expertise and your skills. So who suffers from this? It really is everybody. I mean, okay, there's probably a very small portion of the population that does not suffer from this, but I would venture a guess to say it is just teeny. But I do have an asterisk there. Especially people from marginalized groups. So if you identify with even more than one marginalized group, let's say you're female, but you're also not white, a marginalized group. Or let's say maybe you're not white and you have a low socioeconomic status, right? then imposter syndrome is going to be compounded for you. All of these things, all the marginalized groups that you identify with will build one on top of the other and make your imposter syndrome worse than everybody else. So everybody feels it, but we all feel it to varying degrees, some more than others. Now, why is that the case, though? Why is it different for different people? Well, it's because marginalized groups, when they step out of their little boxes that society built for them, they're challenging those rules, right? They're challenging the cultural norms of what it means to be successful, what it means to be skilled, and what it means to be talented and accomplished. Successful and skilled people, usually they look a certain way, or at least in our society we think they do. And we don't look like that. Therefore, we must not be successful and we must not be skilled. Or at the very least, we have to work twice as hard to prove that we are successful and we are skilled. So how can we each individually start combating this? Well, because it really is a battle, you have to prepare. You have to be in top fighting condition in order to be able to battle these thoughts and these societal pressures and all these negative perceptions that others have about you and maybe you have about yourself. A good example for me was preparing this talk, because I too suffer from imposter syndrome. I did not start preparing this talk until Monday. Procrastinating is a symptom of imposter syndrome, right? So I had a friend I was talking to, and I was telling her how anxious I was feeling and how stressed I was feeling. And she was giving me some very, very good advice, about, well, look at all these great things that you've accomplished, and if you just sit down, I'm sure you work at it piece by piece by piece, you'll do a great job. And I had to tell her, I hear you. I hear everything you're saying right now. But I don't believe you because I am not in top condition to fight against these feelings that I have myself. You have to take care of yourself first before you can ever try and battle imposter syndrome. So what is self-care? It's actually kind of this radical idea where we put us and our needs before everybody else's, right? Too often we're an employee who has to get the project done, or maybe we're the owner and we have a deadline we have to meet, or maybe we're a parent and there's children who need help, or maybe we have a partner and we have to take care of them. We are constantly putting everybody else's needs before our own. So what you have to do is you have to figure out, okay, what do you need? What is the thing that you do that re-energizes you? It makes you feel better. And after, you feel like you can conquer the world. If you don't know what that is, spend some time and investigate that, because you're going to need it in life in general, unless you just want to be stressed all the time, which is a valid life choice, and I support that. But for me, I don't want to do that. So I am in love with Netflix. It is the best thing to happen to me ever. So when I am stressed and I am anxious, which happens every single week, I spend my entire weekend just sitting and watching Netflix. And it helps, because when I'm watching TV, I don't have to worry about anybody else's responsibilities, right? I don't have to care that my kids are good. I usually have my spouse who takes care of them. I don't have to worry about anybody else's needs. All I have to do is worry about me. Do I like this show or not, right? That's pretty simple. But for me, it's an escape, and it re-energizes me, and it makes me feel better. It's not the only thing. I have to exercise when I'm feeling in, not top, but better physical condition, then I generally just feel better. I have more energy. So I try and jog, right? Find the physical things that will help you get into those top physical conditions as well. This is not just mental and physical health. Anyway, the other thing for me is just being out in nature. I don't know why or what it is, but when I go hiking, I can see how insignificant I am and how little my problems really are. So that can be really helpful. Maybe you can't get out hiking or out doing whatever, but in the morning I like to sit out on my front porch, drink my cup of coffee, look at the flowers and listen to the birds. That's nature, right? I get out of my house, away from the screaming kids, and I get to just relax. So figure out what those things are for you, that after you do them, they energize you. Maybe, for me, I'm an introvert, so I like to be alone. Maybe you're an extrovert and being around people. You know, maybe having a great conversation with a friend just really energizes you and makes you feel good. Makes you feel like I can tackle the world again. Whatever that is, do it. And do it often as you need to, because guess what? You have a right to feel good. Okay, then what? Now that we're feeling in top condition, we can take up the world and all its challenges, then what do we do to stop feeling this way? Well, a lot of us have these facts about ourselves, right? We're going to go through each of these. We have our unrealistic expectations of ourselves. We think, well, I was just lucky, right? We feel like we are responsible for other people's feelings. And often we have unrealistic societal expectations about ourselves. So let's start with our unrealistic expectations. You don't have to raise your hand this time, but how many of you have ever felt like your projects have to be perfect? Otherwise, there's really no point. It was worthless, right? If you didn't get it the first time you learned a concept, well, then you were just dumb, right? I'm sure we've all felt that a little bit. Or maybe you feel like you have to have all of the knowledge on a subject before you would consider yourself an expert. I would have never given this talk. Or maybe you can't apply for that job unless you have every single one of those qualifications listed. Maybe you think you have to do everything by yourself, or else, you know, you're not worthy of having a project. Or maybe your work is not as valuable or meaningful if someone else helped you do it. Maybe you have to juggle everything in your life masterfully. Or maybe you'll never be content with just doing a few things. You have to do them all, right? These are unrealistic expectations we have of ourselves. So I really like this flowchart. And I'm going to quote this book in here a lot. These slides are available on SlideShare, so you don't have to type it. But this book called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women. And it does have women in the title. I am very aware of that. But it is the most in-depth resource that I have found about imposter syndrome. Because even this talk today, 30 minutes, I'm not going to get through it all. I'm sorry. This is just like Cliff Notes version. But this book really goes deep into the subject, and I highly recommend you read it. But they have this flowchart about when to let it go. And I felt this was very helpful for all of us, right? We often get stuck and feel like we have to finish it. It has to be perfect. So, first, how important is it, right? Let's say your boss calls you at 6 o'clock in the evening and says, we need to get this job done right away. You know, someone on the other side of the country needs this done. Okay, how important is that? It's not very? Well, that is very important. It's not very, we let it go, right? Well, it could be, that's not important to me. That's not my job to do it. Let's call someone else, let's have them do it. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let someone else take care of that. But if it is me, that's very important. Okay, so I move to the next step and I say, is there anything that I can do about it? Well, if I am the person in charge of that project, or I have to code that, or whatever, yes, there's something I can do about it. If there's not, let's say, this happened to me the other day. Let's say, and I apologize, I do have kids, so I'm going to use that example, but you know, I'm trying to adapt this to your situation. My daughter forgot her homework, you know, and so she calls and says, Mom, I forgot my homework, right? Yeah, it's probably kind of important. Is there anything I could do about it? Yeah, I could drive a half an hour to her school and drop it off, but to be honest, that's her responsibility. That's not my responsibility, and you may disagree with my parenting style, and that's okay too. But I say no. That's not something I can do about it. You know, you get it tomorrow and you can take it then. So I let it go. You know, too bad, but it sucks, but I really can't do anything about that now. It's too late. If there was something I could do about it, then I would say, okay, is the outcome worth it? Is it worth worrying about it? Is it worth putting the effort into it? Should I do this? If it is, yep, go for it and do it. It's pretty easy. If it's not, you know, as what Elsa, right? Elsa said that. Let it go. I did not put the picture on because I'm pretty sure that's a copyright infringement, but let it go. It's not yours to deal with anymore. So, coming to our next section, we're going to do a little exercise. Now, if you don't have something to write with, maybe a notebook or something, I do have pens and paper up here. I ask that everyone do this because it's important. We need to evaluate our achievements. Now, this part of the top is very important. All we want are the facts. Nothing more, nothing less, just the facts. So, I want you to write down evidence of your competence. So, this says list all the things you've accomplished in your life. I'm going to ask you to list 5 because we don't have that much time. It took me a half an hour to do this. It can be something big, it can be something small, doesn't matter. All that matters is either you did it or you didn't. That's all that matters. Pick 5 things that you have accomplished in your life and write them down. These do not have to be big things at all, right? I finished high school. Great. Yay, I did it. I finished that course. Great. Yay, I did it. Big or small. Doesn't matter. I also want you to recognize if this was kind of difficult, that means that this is a problem area, right? You might have a hard time recognizing when you do something well, or great, or just accomplish something. So try to keep this in mind going forward too. Maybe the next time you do something great, write it down. Then it's easier. You can always reflect back on this. Now we do this because even though we have accomplished so much, oftentimes we don't internalize that. We don't feel like we've really done that much in our lives, right? I'm not president. I'm not the CEO of a big company. We think I haven't done anything. And that's not true, right? We wanted the facts. That's what we got. You've done great things in your life. The important thing is, though, when you write these down, you can't put qualifiers. Now, the qualifiers are the but, right? Well, I did get that promotion, but I was just lucky. Or I did get that job, but I had a really great friend who helped me out. But. Those are the qualifiers. And what you're doing is you're diminishing your success. You're making it not as important as it actually is. Now, it's a problem for you, because then you feel less successful. But in this last line, when someone gives you a compliment, right? It says, hey, great job on that promotion. That was awesome. You say, thanks, but I was really just lucky. You're also telling them, you really shouldn't compliment me, you silly person. I'm not that great. Why would you think that? It's demeaning to them as well. Recognizing when you're doing that is really important because you're going to change how you're thinking about yourself and how you're internalizing those accomplishments. So, for sure, next time someone gives you a compliment, you just say thank you and stop. You have to stop talking. Say thank you, or thank you, that was kind. Don't add qualifiers to it. Don't diminish your success. And they're going to be more appreciative because they're going to feel better about giving you that compliment than if you had added but on the end of it as well. Now, I highly recommend, when you have time, go through and do your whole life if you can. You really need to see an accurate picture of your accomplishments in order to start believing in yourself. I'm really seeing that you are a successful person and you have done great things. Then after that, once you have that list, next to those achievements, you go ahead and add, what role did luck play? What about timing, connections, or maybe even your own personality? What roles did those play in your success? And then you also need to add the specific actions that you took in order to take full advantage of those contributions. So get an accurate picture of what happened and don't diminish the role that you played. So that brings us into just being lucky, right? We're all just lucky. So have you said, I got lucky. I was in the right place at the right time, right? Or it's because they like me. Those kinds of things, they're qualifiers, they're diminishing our success. So luck is in our life. You can't deny everybody is lucky. Chances are successful people probably have a lot of luck. They didn't just, crawl through there and just automatically get all this success. They were lucky. They did have breaks. But that's not the end all be all, right? It's not just luck. Luck is going to give you the ball, right? But then you get to decide, what are you going to do with it? If you're not prepared, you're just going to stand there and nothing good is going to come of it, right? Maybe something bad will come of it because you'll start saying, oh, I should have done that. I should have done this. I should have done that. No. When luck comes your way and gives you the ball, be prepared, right? Practice before luck brings it to you. That way when you get the ball, you can run with it. You can go do that layup or whatever other basketball thingies happen with balls, right? So you have a part in your success as well. Recognize that luck does have a part, but so do you. And it is a skill that you can develop to recognize when luck has given you the ball and you now need to run with it. But it's also important that you understand what are the kinds of things you want to accomplish in your life and be prepared. Start preparing now so that when luck comes, you can run with that ball. You can make that layup, right? That's another thing. We also say that we say that others are lucky, but I'm not lucky, right? It's because we don't want our mistakes, our failures, to be our fault, right? We want it to be something over here, something mystical that was out of our control. If only I had gotten as lucky as them, then I would be where they are, right? And there could be some truth to that. But also recognize that it is easier to blame luck, something that's outside of our control, than it is to say that we missed that opportunity. I wasn't prepared. Okay, so recognize that and start preparing. Don't blame it on luck anymore because luck will come. Start preparing now. Put yourself in those right places at the right time. So another fact that we often feel like, and everybody feels this to varying degrees, but sometimes we feel like we are responsible for other people's feelings. Right? So sometimes we are afraid of being successful because it means that we're going to lose friends. Maybe we're going to lose some family. We don't want to hurt someone else's feelings. Now, I have a very vivid example of this. I remember it vividly. It's so funny. So back when I was in elementary school, like 4th grade, I remember winning the spelling bee. And if you look at pictures from that time, you will not know that I won because I was crying. My cheeks were all puffy and I was red. I was crying. And I was doing that because I had won, but one of my close friends, she had lost. She didn't lose, she got 2nd place, right? But in my mind, she lost and I won. And I felt terrible because I know what it feels like to lose. And I know the pain and the agony, and I just felt terrible. And I could not enjoy my success because I was too worried about her and how she was feeling. Why don't we just focus on our success and also help others, right? It doesn't have to be an either or. You can both be happy. You can work together. It is not a zero-sum game. We often feel like it is. I won the prize and you didn't, but it's not always the case. You need to be able to own your own success as well, right? Those are important, and those are going to help build you up. Conversely, you also need to be happy in other people's success, right? Maybe you won this time, maybe they'll win the next time. I'm constantly teaching my 6- and 7-year-old, it's okay if you don't win. You go and you say, great game, that was awesome, great job, right? We're all happier when we lift each other up. Sometimes though, we don't want our friends and family to disown us for a lot of reasons, right? There could be the case, maybe you don't go for the big promotion because you might start making more money than someone else. And maybe they don't want to be friends with you anymore because you're going to make them feel bad, right? We're worried about these kinds of things. Maybe we don't go for a prestigious position because friends and family might start to think that we're smarter than them and we'll make them feel bad. You need to remember that it's important for you to be happy and it's important for you to be successful. And even though it can be really hard, you want to surround yourself with the people who are happy in your success. And sometimes that does mean making your own family out of your friends and your other close acquaintances. Sometimes it's a choice you have to make, and you have to figure out what is best for you long term. Definitely be kind, definitely draw boundaries, okay? And remember, you can never be responsible for how someone else is feeling. It's a game you are never going to win. Because that is only up to them how they are going to feel. You can do your best to be kind, but you cannot do things hoping that they're just always going to feel better. Because you're always going to put your own needs on the back burner in order to do that. Some good advice I heard, I have no idea where, but it was great advice, is you always hang around with the people who have the skills and the traits that you want to someday have, right? Hang around with people who are in some ways better than you, and that way hopefully you can become better too. Don't let people drag you down, lift others up, and have other people lift you up as well. So, next one is about societal expectations, right? And they affect us differently as well. We all get conflicting messages though from society. One for women that comes in a lot is lean in, right? You ask for that raise, you ask for that promotion. But then we're also told, well, don't be too aggressive about it, right? You can't be too demanding or else then you'll be seen as bossy. So don't do that, right? Those are conflicting messages. We want you to advocate for yourself, but not if you're going to put someone else down to do it. Right? We're all given these conflicting messages by society. So men, we want you to be funny, we want you to be kind and endearing, but at the same time, you better be masculine, right? You need to stand up for people. Like, we're giving these conflicting messages, and that's why I say they're crap. It's society putting us in these little boxes. One thing we're often seen is, well, you have to have your full-time job that pays well, right? Because you want the prestige. You should probably be a parent, have a family, have a house, have animals, if you're like me and have like 4 animals, have kids, but also participate in the community, make sure you're speaking and attending conferences and constantly learning and moving up the corporate ladder. No wonder we are so exhausted because we are constantly having this pressure put on us to perform and be better and be perfect, right? Be the perfect employee, be the perfect developer. Remember that these things are crap, okay? Just keep that in your head. They're real though, and they really do impact us. We feel the pressure daily to conform. Recognize those feelings, recognize that they're crap, and help change them, right? When you see someone else trying to impose those pressures on you, challenge them. Say, is that realistic? Really, you think I can do that much work? I can be a community member, I can be a full-time developer, and I can do all these things. Is that realistic? Really? Try and challenge those societal norms. It's difficult. This is probably one of the most difficult things about imposter syndrome. And we have control, but at the same time, it's more of just remember their crap. When it comes across, remember it's crap, and try to let it go. Okay? Also recognize when you see people doing it to others. That is very common for us to try and compete with each other, to try and put each other down. Recognize when you're doing it, okay? Because we have to change it. So the second title of this is You're Not Alone. I mean, you can already tell, right? You're not alone in feeling this way. But I love these quotes. I mean, Meryl Streep, she's one of my favorite actresses. She says, "Why would anyone want to see me again in a movie? I don't know how to act anyway, so why am I doing this?" I mean, you would think Meryl Streep, she'd have it together, but she feels like an imposter too. She has the same unrealistic expectations placed on her as well. Right now she's She's written 11 books, but each time she thinks, uh-oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. And Mike Myers, at any time I still expect that the no-talent police will come and arrest me. Right? And Emma Watson, any moment someone's going to find out I'm a total fraud. Everyone feels it. But one thing that connects us and them is we're both in creative fields. I mean, yeah, we think about movies very creative, absolutely. Oftentimes we don't think about tech as creative, but it is, right? You're constantly having to solve problems and come up with new and innovative ways to do stuff. That is creativity. But it's also subjective, okay? So we fall prey to the same kind of subjectivity that they do in their work. We have critics. We have people who will tell us, no, that framework is crap. Why did you choose that? That was a stupid choice. Right? They're looking at your code and someone says, oh, that is terrible. And another person says, wow, that's amazing. It's subjective. That doesn't make it real, but it feels real. But it's a challenge for all of us. Overall, you're going to have to forgive yourself a lot. Because you're human, you're going to make mistakes a lot, and especially if you're someone who has unrealistic expectations about yourself, you're going to have to work really hard on this. One thing that I like to do that really helps me is, well, let me give you this example someone gave me. It was in a TED Talk, and I forget which one. But it was a woman. She went into an interview. It went okay. You know, it wasn't great. She goes back and she tells her friend, her best friend. She tells her how it went, some of the things she was worried about, some of the things she said that she wasn't sure if that was right. Her best friend goes, wow, you're a moron. Why would you say that? That is ridiculous. Of course you're never going to get hired. Ugh. And we think, that best friend is terrible. She needs to drop that person, get her out of her life, right? But then if I say, well, that wasn't her best friend, that was her, saying those exact same things, then we say, oh, I get that. Right? Sometimes you have to take yourself out of the equation, pretend it's someone else, right? Okay, so I told you that I waited until Monday to do this talk, right? Part of that was my fault, right? I was stressed, I was anxious, so I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. What's that?
Netflix on.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. So I procrastinated, and that was my fault, and I own it. I want to talk a little bit, though, how procrastinating helps you, right? It helps you because it gives you an out, right? So if this talk bombs and it's terrible, it's not my fault. I only had like 4 days to prepare it, so of course it was terrible. That wasn't my fault. So we procrastinate. It's a symptom, but you need to recognize it both hurts, and in some way it does help you, and that's why you do it. Yeah. So, all right, I procrastinated, that was on me. But if I put on Tiffany and I say, she tells me, okay, I didn't start this talk until Monday. I say, oh, man, yeah, I understand, that's rough. And then she tells me, okay, well, yeah, I also was organizing 2 classes at the same time. I was teaching 4 nights before, not 4 nights, 4 classes before this talk. I was also organizing the class. I was also helping prepare for the conference. I was setting up quiet rooms and luncheons. Then I was also planning 3 other classes, and I was having to take care of my family. I had to make sure that my husband was okay with all this work I was doing, and I had household chores, and I had to take care of the dog because she kept throwing up, and all these things. Then you say, oh, I get it. Yeah, I see why you procrastinated. That's a lot of stuff to deal with. I can say it to her, right? I can forgive her because she's my friend, and, you know, she's human and she's flawed. Why can't I forgive me? I'm human, and I am flawed too. So sometimes if you're having a hard time, put it on someone else. Pretend it's someone else. Your imaginary best friend right here saying those exact same things. They dropped the ball. Can you forgive them? Then you can forgive yourself too. But you have to work on that. It is a skill that you have to develop. And chances are if you have impostor syndrome, you might have not developed that skill. Overall, forgive yourself, right? Remember, you're still learning. Everybody else is still learning as well. You're flawed, you're human, and we're all learning. the end of my talking part. We're 5 minutes over, but that's not terrible. So, I want to know, do you guys have questions? Do you have specific instances where you felt imposter syndrome and you're just like, I don't know how to deal, right?
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, come on, it's okay, we've shared a lot. Yeah.
So, not exactly a specific story, but when you were saying that you kind of become more like the people you spend the most time with, I totally agree, and I've noticed that myself, but I've noticed it can be helpful to make sure not to be the worst in all the groups. Seriously, I've had this problem where I kind of gravitate to people who are more skilled than I am, and so I compare my skills to theirs, even though they've been around in the industry for a couple more years than I have, and I'm like, oh, I don't have the things you do, I don't have the jobs you do. That must reflect poorly on me. Whereas if I actually bother hanging out with my peers or people a year younger or a year earlier in the industry, it's like, oh, okay, I'm actually doing okay in the scheme of things.
Yeah, you need a realistic perception,
taking
right?
perspective can be helpful, and it can make you feel really good just to help others and reassure you that, yeah, you do know stuff. You may know half of what there is to know on the subject, but there's 100% more than you do.
Oh, absolutely. That was a great example. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. And then,
I had a boss tell me that the other guy who interviewed did so much better than I did. But I got the job because I had a master's degree. It was a school and they were supposed to put value on that. So that just felt terrible.
I was going to say, did you feel like, well, I guess I don't have the skills then?
No, I have this piece of paper.
Yeah.
That's not good.
And it's terrible because that is an objective measurement, right? That piece of paper is supposed to be objective, but it's all based on what you learn, so it's also very subjective at the same way. It almost tricks us. At the same time, I know a lot of people actually, they feel like, oh, I need to go get the PhD. Oh, well, I have that one, but I still don't feel like I know everything. I'm going to go get another PhD, or I'm going to go off and do this. And you continually try and get all these objective measures, and it doesn't change how you feel because it's still subjective. You have to change your perception of your skills. Thank you for sharing that.
So I was thinking about something you mentioned earlier in the talk, but I can't remember what you said exactly. But it was just like I feel like for me, there's a bit of a feedback loop that happens. So we have what's ultimately a subjective community that ends up inventing, like gatekeeping basically.
Yeah.
They're inventing gates that say this is what legitimate looks like, this is what legitimate is, and anyone who does not meet this definition, like I feel like people go out of their way to sort of disparage it, which like reinforces my own sense of inadequacy. So like my example is like even just yesterday, like I do PHP stuff as well as other stuff, but I enjoy PHP. I like PHP, and I mentioned that I like PHP to somebody, and immediately they're just like, oh well, actual developers don't like PHP because of this. And
Real developers.
yeah, and like real developers don't learn PHP like from the front end down. They learn other actual languages and then build up. And it's like, you know, like on a logical level, I get it. Like the different ways that we learn are subjective, and we're coming from different angles. And like telling me that I have to live my life in an assembly line fashion is bullshit. And I get that, but on an emotional level, it's really hard to decode that when you're getting that from the community as well as from yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
So I didn't know if anybody else had any thoughts about that, but I'd love to hear your feels.
I have a thought on that. It comes to PHP users group. It's like the best users group in all the land. Nobody's saying that crap there. But as far as imposter syndrome for me, like I designed websites for 10 years, and people are like, "Oh, you're great at it," and I work for a blogging company. And when I tell people my domain name, I'm like, but there's nothing really up there because I don't know what to put up there, and I don't know how to design my own website, and it's ridiculous, and it's stupid, and I put it off, but it's something I really fight with, you know?
And you can't just say, well, I'm busy, okay? Right? It's realistic that you haven't gone through it.
It is
You have a lot of
realistic that I'm busy. There's a lot going on, but it's like, it's embarrassing.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then I go to do it, and I'm like, this isn't perfect enough. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my goodness.
So,
I just found out today that like 3 more people were reading my blog post, and I was like, oh no!
I know, that's what I think. Every time I find out someone's reading my blog, I'm like, don't look at it.
Because there's a point during the process where I'm just like, oh, I know it's not perfect, but I'm just going to throw it out there and not think about it anymore. Right? But we feel like it has to be perfect.
I work in a group that does agile development, and I think it's great from a development part of it is doing stand-up every day, and so I look at what I've done the previous day and what I have on my plate, and there's like a palpable anxiety every time I have to sort of account for my last 24 hours. Like, what have I gotten done? What have I accomplished? And it's sort of baked into the entire methodology that you have very rapid response, rapid feedback, and it's hard to be able to step back into the big picture and say, oh, I've accomplished a lot. But, it's hard to transmit that on every day, day-to-day business.
And I never thought about it in that context, right? And do you feel like management can help with that? Your project manager, whomever you're talking to about that, if they were forgiving and were like, it's okay, I understand, I see all the things on your plate, and that's quite a bit, this is understandable. Let's prioritize or re-estimate or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you get that?
Yeah, but there's still an anxiety about having to talk about what you've done and what you're planning on doing and promoting yourself compared to everybody else on the team.
Absolutely. I remember I'm not working full time right now, but when I was, I always had this anxiety because I always felt like I had to prove my worth.
Yeah.
Right? They're paying me, so I better prove and churn out as much as I possibly can so that they don't fire me. So I think that's a common thing as well. And you?
So, first, Stacie, I just want to tell you thanks. I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
And when I first picked this topic, it reminded me of an experience I had when I was in college. I was in a differential equations class, and I had to work really hard at it. And I remember looking around thinking, everybody in this room understands what the professor's saying except for me. Every once in a while I ask questions, and I felt like nobody else would ask questions. I'd want to stay around afterwards and talk to somebody, but everybody just leave. And I thought, wow, they all got it figured out and they're on their way.
Maybe they're also stressed.
And so I'm in the whole class, I'm thinking that, I'm the dumbest one in here. I had to work really hard. I got an A, and I found out there was a 50% fail rate for that class.
Wow.
And so, but I always think back to that because you always assume the worst.
Yeah.
And it's usually not the case.
Yeah. Did you ever feel too like, oh, I passed, that must have been just really lucky that I did that? Or did you see that you put in so much hard work and effort for that?
Probably both.
Yeah. I do remember my first programming class, I felt the exact same way. In fact, who here has not asked a question because you felt like you were the only person who didn't know the answer? Yeah. So I was that person, and then I found out that there were about 3 guys. I was the only woman, so that made it worse, but I found there were 3 guys around me who had no idea what was going on. And I was actually getting what was going on, but I felt like I wasn't. And so I started helping them, right? It's the teaching part of it. And I realized, oh my goodness, I have something to contribute. And then my next class was worse, and I stopped going. But I'm still Oh, sorry. We will get there.
Oh, I was just going to disagree with you that you do work full-time, meaning of that.
I work full-time, but I have a qualifier because I don't get paid.
So it's not real work.
I know, right? I am the imposter. Oh, goodness.
No, you admit you being an imposter.
Yeah. I'm good at making it. You had a question. Okay, go ahead.
Well, piggybacking off, just writing down achievements or what it is to talk about with this stand-up. It reminded me of my first job working at the Air Force. And part of how to manage and track performance was every week I'd submit a Word document of what I did last week, what I did this week and stuff. And it was displayed as, well, just take 5 minutes, it'll be good. It was the most stressful hour to hour and a half. And on the flip side, the more I did it, I actually got kind of better at it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an interesting thing. But then when I left and went private, started doing one-on-one reviews and stuff. And I just had one like a month ago where this is my first one, my first year, so I'm not used to that now. So hey, you're doing a great job. And I did the whole, yeah, thanks, but I could have done more. I could have done that.
Yeah.
And even when, I never dealt with salary. So it's I think you should earn more. What do you think? And maybe and then that's this huge number on me. I was like, this number, I was like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, did it stress you out?
And I just stressed out more.
Yeah.
It was terrifying.
Yeah. It really is. It's, at the core, is internalizing these are worth that, right?
Right.
Really seeing all the hard work that we're putting into it and seeing it through clear eyes without all those qualifiers and all those things we add on to it.
That is end up me thinking like, I can't be worth that much.
I know,
That's
right?
impossible.
Yeah, and you do have to balance that too, because if you do take a really high number and you don't feel like you're worth it, that is going to be a stressful job as well,
Yeah.
right? Oh, it's tough. Yeah.
So I was just going to address the question of like, how do you know what to put on a personal site? Like, even if you make a really pretty site, you have no content, it's like, how can I direct people to this? Whenever you have a problem and you look for docs on the internet for it, and it's hard to find them, and then you find a solution, write it down, not as an I'm clueless, but as a I would like to help you thing. I didn't know this wasn't well documented, and suddenly you spun it into a success. It's like getting into a new open source project. If you offer to help them with your documentation, it's a get out of dumb question free card. It's never, well, I couldn't figure this out. It's, so I think a new user would look in this place and could, and we should have more detail there. Could you help me figure out how to explain that well?
Yeah, I love
That's
that.
really good.
And a positive spin, right? And a more realistic one,
Yes,
right?
spinning your own work.
Yeah.
If you can get comfortable with that, and comfortable with like showing people how what you did accomplishes their goals, that makes things like stand-up meetings hurt a lot less, or at least it did for me.
Yeah. Now, last question back here, and then we'll have to break out. You finish up, and then I'll finish up, okay?
One of the things that I found, at least for myself, is that this imposter syndrome, it doesn't seem to really, for me, go away. It begins to become easier to manage as I get better at, at working with it. But and I can just think of all these times in my life, it doesn't matter how many accomplishments I have. And I look back on it, I'm like, I have tons of accomplishments. And yet, every single time, I could, if I was to go back on every single one of those, I could go, oh, well, I just got lucky. And that's my big one, is I just got lucky.
Yeah.
And so, I think that if we continue to tell ourselves, though, that there was an aspect of luck to it, but there was also a lot of, what did I, was I prepared, when luck came my way?
Exactly.
What was it that I did to prepare myself so that I could be ready for luck?
Yeah, you don't have to just qualify either one, right?
Right.
Be realistic.
Exactly.
I love that. Great comment too, that it never goes away. Oh,
Yeah.
that is so true. I wish I had something better to say, but yes. Now, I want to let you know that I do have these right here. These are another worksheet you can do if you want to practice a little bit of helping to identify your accomplishments and things like that. This is a fun little worksheet I got from you, and it's also available in the resources too if you want to check it out. So, Corbin, did you have something? We'll let you go.
Well, I feel like sometimes we compare ourselves to what others are doing.
Yeah.
And you've seen like what our best is.
That's a great comment. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you all for coming, all of this stuff. So